Thank you so much, everybody, first of all, for coming. I'm extremely pleased to be part of this symposium, which, as we can see, has been greatly organized. I'm very thankful to Professor McCarthy, to Sophie, to everybody else who put this symposium together, and to everybody who is here with us and also tuning in electronically. My presentation today will be on international graduate student social adaptations at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I think it comes at a nice point following Nicole's presentation, which focused more on the international undergraduate students and touched on the issue of, or the notion of their experiences, which I think this presentation would probe into a little more deeply. And I'm presenting it on behalf of a couple of colleagues, Jason Bailey and Jasmine Collins, and myself. The presentation will briefly go over our project in its entirety, and I will end with student recommendations. So to get us started, as we have seen already, international graduate student enrollments in the United States, the trends that is, have been increasing over the last decade per Wong 2009, and also undergraduate student enrollment. And just to give you a sense of some figures, I know you've heard the projection for 2014 from Nicole. Actually, according to Fast Facts, Open Doors 2013 data, if we take the academic year 2011 and 2012 versus 2012-13, the total number of international students in the United States in that first year was 764,500, and then it rose to 819,600 in 2012-13. So that gives a 7.2% change. International students made 3.9% of the total U.S. higher education enrollment, which counts over 21.2 million students in the United States in 2013. And as you've also heard, the University of Illinois is now in the first place in terms of the number of international students, followed by the University of Southern California, LA, and also Purdue, New York University, Columbia, UCLA, to name a few. The number of international undergraduate and graduate students is relatively similar, with slightly more undergraduate students. So going back to really what got us started on this project is we were in a class, Organization of Higher Education, last semester, and in conjunction with the Ethnography of the University Initiative, to whom we are really, really thankful to give us this opportunity to do this project as well, we were able to do this study and to build on the International Student Barometer, the survey that the International Scholar and Student Services Office here at our university administered in the fall of 2012 to about 3,000 undergraduate and graduate international students. And very briefly, the greatest challenges for international students that came out of that survey were forming friendships outside of their culture group, language issues, and culture shock. So it seemed natural to actually probe more deeply into those now that we have them found and sort of just indicated in this survey. We really wanted to see what was behind those experiences. Ourselves, being my colleagues and I, graduate students, with a lot of international students in our classes, including myself, I'm an international student from Serbia, we really wanted to first start with the graduate student sample, and we plan to expand that. So as far as the literature, we looked at it at 3 levels: the psychological, academic, and social level. And what the literature is saying, really, at the psychological level, is that international students experiencing discrimination, alienation, homesickness, and that really something that really stood out in the literature review was that international students face a quite unique set of challenges, very different challenges than domestic students, which may not be known initially, may not be realized, but they really do, as Mori 2000 indicated, in terms of linguistic challenges, interpersonal challenges, academic and financial difficulties, to name a few, as the biggest stressors. As far as academic, the picture is a little more positive and really encouraging in terms of international students really appreciating so much research opportunities in the United States, and also collaboration with American students in classrooms who really help them better grasp the material, and also with faculty and advisors. On the social level, really what came out were interactions with American students. That was the most significant factor related to students' adjustment. And research has found that international students, due to issues in interactions, tend to socialize more with co-nationals rather than with American students. So there are some challenges there. Now, our research questions are more descriptive and exploratory at the same time in nature. They are, how do international graduate students at our university describe their social adaptation experiences, how satisfied they are with the University of Illinois services, and what suggestions, if any, they may have. So our recruitment period was in November and October of 2013. We conducted interviews. Our questionnaire had 17 questions. They were leading us to do these semi-structured interviews at public locations, which were chosen by international students. Interviews were recorded, and they lasted anywhere from 18 to 45 minutes. Very briefly, our sample consisted of 6 graduate students, equally distributed in terms of gender. They were from China, Kenya, Chile, and Turkey, mainly PhD students with 2 MS students from the College of Business, and then the remaining were from engineering and education. The age range was from 22 to 40 years of age. We used the top-down approach, and we extracted 3 themes. They emerged from the interviews. Those are adjustment obstacles, peer interaction, and adjustment strategies. And as you will see, each of these is actually characterized with 3 distinct sub-themes, each having 2 indicators. So I will start with the first theme, adjustment obstacles, characterized by feelings of alienation, language proficiency issues, and preconceived notions. So very briefly, this feeling of alienation was driven by discrimination and invisibility. Discrimination mainly in terms of accent or ethnicity and race, and invisibility, I will try to illustrate on the next slide by this salient quotation by one of our participants. I was a bit disappointed by the inability to make connection with American students and international students. If I did not go out of my way to greet them throughout the semester or create the relationships, they didn't remember me, or they just didn't see me. So really, it came down to an international student making his or her own first step, really, in breaking into the fabric of the domestic population and trying to be more visible. They quickly understood that it was really a lot on them to make that first step. Now, as far as the language proficiency, there have been some issues with unfamiliarity with basic vernacular, and also international students sometimes are apprehensive of perhaps offending others or saying something inappropriate. So they're not always sure that they're saying something correctly. So there's that apprehension there as well. As far as preconceived notions, this has to do actually with what they expected before coming to America, and then what they really faced here when they actually came. And sometimes they match, but sometimes they didn't. This is not to say that all of the student experiences were not positive. They were. A lot of students actually did quite all right, and research is showing that has to do with resilience. And some students may have perceived that America would be like in a Hollywood movie, as one participant said, but that wasn't quite the case. As far as theme 2, peer interaction, it was characterized by, again, interaction with American peers, making friends and common interests, And the first sub-theme really has to do with cultural differences and isolation. And what that means is that international students tend to, at this first layer, really conglomerate with co-national students from their own country because of that shared culture and differences between theirs and the domestic culture or host culture. And then as a second layer, they kind of tend to gravitate towards international students from other countries, just because even though they all come from different countries, they really share very similar experiences here, as we've just seen in terms of these adjustment obstacles. And then they penetrate or try to at least into the domestic fabric and make friends with American students. Now, making friends with American students really happens most easily, as they say, in classes, through work opportunities, through different events and organizations. And I will just illustrate very quickly that this goes as far as international students really doing an unpaid internship, for instance, just to meet Americans, just to make friends. And one of the students said that she also tried to become a member of this student organization on campus that was outside of her field of study, which was at the College of Business. So it was an engineering student organization, and they had to make an airplane from scratch. And she didn't know anything about airplanes, but she just said, well, I can do some bookkeeping for you. So they had meetings, and then she said, well, when those meetings stopped, I really felt that my friend circle was affected, and it kind of closed on it. Now, common interests, I won't go too deeply into this, but really they share commonalities, obviously, within their own cultures, such as different sports, and they may not know about American sports, such as football. They really appreciated the College of Businesses buying them football tickets. So again, that doesn't mean they don't want to learn about another sport. They definitely do. So that was really great for them. And obviously, campus and campus groups and communities were very, very appreciated on campus as sources of opportunities to meet friends. I won't quote that one that I just showed, because that quote I already alluded to in terms of the Hollywood movies. Now, theme 3 is adjustment strategies. It's the last theme, and it has to do with personal responsibility, interpersonal resources, and campus resources. Really, it boils down to taking initiative, something that some international students are not very used to, coming from different cultures that may be making that first step when foreigners come to their country. Here, you have to make it. So that's really something that stood out. I do want to say also something that stood out. I feel that it's still a good spot to mention this. They really were appreciative of American students in class being very gentle in terms of communicating, and when international students had trouble maybe explaining something, still American students were very gentle and very cooperative in trying to understand and ask questions maybe if they didn't. But that really went very smoothly in terms of the experiences of our sample. Classmates and study groups and advisor and faculty support was also very important, and formal programs, student organizations. They really like the Welcome Week, the Quad Day, also Krannert Center for Performing Arts. They also enjoy American host families. It's a nice outlet into the American culture. A lot of students come here to learn about the American culture as one of the reasons to actually study in the US, and obviously besides their academic program attractiveness. And so it's very important to know how to position oneself in the American culture, both personally and professionally, and especially if somebody wants to stay here a little longer. Quote 3 also has to do with taking that initiative. This presentation will touch a little bit on the satisfaction and some dissatisfaction with the services and student recommendations. So students are satisfied with ISSS emails, with a lot of information there, with safety, with transportation, with these large-scale events, with opportunities to meet higher-level executives. However, there is some dissatisfaction, and we do want to know that this is not in any strong term, so to say. It is just that the orientation initially seemed to have been quite packed. The international students obviously understand that they need to learn about visa issues, about administrative offices, about academics, but they just feel that it sort of dissipates throughout the year, and they just would like to suggest that orientation orientations or orientation-like gatherings throughout the year include a little bit more of that social. They sometimes, and this is sort of campus-wide, this is not just one office, it's sort of across offices, and I'm sure a lot of us have felt this as well. They felt a little bit overwhelmed with information, and sometimes they really needed help knowing how to parse through that information and where to actually go and what's happening where. And so I will end with recommendations. They really would like to have increased representation. I think this is already happening. This today is one evidence of that. So creating this communication space to voice opinions by international students, creating that space for them and allowing them to have more of an active rather than passive or receiving role. Increasing student representation from Africa, including narratives of student experiences, especially in diversity discussions in classes. Increased opportunities for peer interaction. I think Nicole and Sophie have already mentioned as well that we would like to advocate for this international synergy, meaning including the United States and all countries that we have here, not just one's own, creating more interaction among houses on campus, cultural houses, hiring also American students in places where international students come very often, just to create more of these opportunities for interaction. And another example is having, for instance, an opportunity for socialization between American and American and international students about 3 times a semester. Very briefly, in conclusion, we know that our sample is not as large. We plan to increase it to include more students, to include American students, which would really be interesting rather to hear that side, and really may arise in conversations. The implications are such that we hope that the study contributes to thematic informativeness, that it hopefully will be also informative for any kind of program formation or modification, creating possibilities for international students to be included more in discussions here on campus. And we think it'd be interesting to do a study based on the duration of stay of international students in the United States. So that is what we have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or your comments. Thank you.
Jelena, did you find anything that was different from the literature that you read, or anything that was surprising to you?
Mm-hmm. That's actually a great question, and I will just reiterate that really what we found quite surprising, something that the literature didn't really talk about, is taking that first initiative. So that's really what a lot of speakers, or rather a lot of participants in our sample said, that it really came down to them, if they wanted to engage in some activities on campus, if they wanted to make friends, even though sometimes, as one participant said, it's kind of strange, you know, approaching a stranger and saying, hello, you know, I'm so-and-so. But they say it has to do also with personality. So this one participant had a very kind of outgoing personality, and she would approach Americans and introduce herself, and she says, I would like them to remember me, you know. So I think that really was something that came out from our study. And again, I think this idea that I already discussed, where American students in classrooms are really seen as very helpful, very patient with international students, English speaking. So those are the two. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was once attending, it was a film, I think Nicole was in the room as well. It was a film by a Chinese filmmaker. It was about a documentary that has been made, and people were asking questions of the filmmaker, and he was really frank, and he said the biggest thing, somebody said what would make a big difference, he said the biggest thing would be if there was a dating service for American and non-American students, and he said we're young and we want to, he said I'm looking for an American girlfriend, and he said if there was possibility for people to, if there was more inter-dating, he said the atmosphere would be really different. And that really stayed with me, because that was like really hard things to institute, but I bet that would be true.
Definitely appreciate the comments. It didn't quite come in our study, but I can see the points, and I think that the students did go as far as, like I said, engaging in unpaid internships and really just trying to meet as many Americans as they could. Okay, anything else, or?